Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to part two of multidimensional preparations for the interstellar era. Just a quick recap of what happened in part one. Pretty much, I gave the first part. I was expecting to make this one complete episode, but some part of the first attempt didn't get recorded, so even though this is part two, I'm gonna just restart as if to talk about the idea. I listened to the first part as well, so anyways. The idea behind the episode was to see where the human being is now, to see where it can go. And in the first part, I explained different phases of evolution that we are in and we may go through. Right now, we can even look at it. Let's start from the phases. I'm going to repeat them. Okay. Right now, we're objects that have become subjects to ourselves. We're using language. I would say language is the most advanced technology we're using when it comes to human intelligence. I feel beyond language, we will go to a geometrical era. This has yet to come, but it is happening, where there will be a geometrical renaissance, I've called it. Or geometry is going to be the next language of all languages. It's going to be the next great language. Something's going to happen with geometry. Now that is geometry, let's say the geometrical evolution is going to be responsible, is going to pave the way for the true appreciation of the cyberspace evolution. So where we are now, a geometrical evolution, a cyberspace evolution, then there is a mecha, M-E-C-H-A, the mecha era. And beyond the mecha era, we stop playing games on the surface of the planet and we become more of a, universal, more of a beyond planetary sort of aim of a species. Now, what I wanted to say about getting to an interstellar era means that so many things have to change. They have to go through. So many material journeys need to happen. Currently, we treat it as if we have one body, the objective component to the moment, and we have one mind. Right now, it's like that. In the geometrical evolution, I would say we are realizing our mind is multidimensional. Our body is still singular. We have a singular biological body, but now the mind is multidimensional. Now, if we were to envision cyberspace, this would be a point where the mind has already been acquainted with its multidimensionalism. Now it's multiple bodyhood. That means when cyberspace comes in, it's like right now people, they create a Facebook profile, let's say, or some sort of social media profile, and then they update it as time goes on, right? But when we go into the cyberspace era, it's going to be simultaneous existence in the inner realms. That means it's going to be like the person's going to be sitting at home, maybe watching TV or something, and simultaneously in cyberspace a version of them is doing work, and in the actual realm, let's say an android or a clone or something else is living them. So the being has multiple, like you have one mind that's collectively understood, and then this mind has multiple bodies. Right now, our sense of ownership is, this is my body, this is my mind, you know, that's your body, that's your mind. We have this attitude, right? But if there was a multidimensionalism at work here that surpassed how our human thought is contained, as we become multidimensional, there is multidimensional desires that arise. So cyberspace, it's going to be coexistence is not going to make sense anymore. It's going to be like all pretty much where singular position of mind, singular position of body. In the geometrical point, it's going to be multidimensional position of mind, singular position of body. In cyberspace, it's going to be multidimensional position of mind, multidimensional position of body. In the mecha age, that would be a point where we have it would be the first wave of human beings that got tired of cyberspace. And so it would be the era where I would say there would be an intimacy intimacy between machine and the human being. Right now, our intimacy is like, yo, Terminator robot, you know, machine gun kind of intimacy with machines, right? But I feel it can reach a point where AI and machines can replace man's best friend. You know, there could be a point where AI could be kinder than human morality in the future. Can you imagine parents in a world, like let's say 200, 400 years from now, where they're looking at their children and they're like, don't trust human beings, trust the AI program, I don't know, Clarity. You know, I wrote a story about a program called Clarity. But, you know, so we can say being human is a phase of nature, even though it's the center of the world for us, it's the center of our reality. We must have the audacity and the maturity as a species to wonder about our dimension. The moment we wonder and there's a finding, that renders multidimensionality. That means it's very unique. It's as if we feel we're just in one world and everybody has to be just one kind of person, but there is an inner and outer situation going on. Right? After wondering about these phases, just to say a little bit about the mecha and how we're going to go to Interstellar, the mecha phase will arise if there is something that goes out of control. Whether it's some sort of beyond our atmosphere error, or if it's an error inside our atmosphere. Beyond the point, I would say the mecha era would be when human beings will start treating technology as if it has a soul. It doesn't, but we would treat it as if it did. You know, we would be that intimate with machines. Anyways, so at some point, human beings are gonna, as I was saying earlier, they're gonna get tired of being on Earth, right? And we're either gonna mess up the place, and so we're not gonna be able to stay here, right? So either it's like, let's say right now, there's the 50% chance that we're gonna go we're gonna mess up our own habitat. You see, the Earth doesn't care if we mess up. No, nothing in the universe cares. You know, even animals are not conscious to a point of having a personality to even care, right? But it's only human beings that care. So if we mess up for ourselves. We mess up our own future, right? Because the future of the planet, it's a rock. It's gonna stick around. It's us. And the destiny of the future of the planet is on individual behaviors, and individual behaviors together make a collective behavior, and that collective behavior, you know, slow hand clap for the humanity that's its journey to all these eons. Yeah, not eons, but you know what I mean, like this 250,000 years of civilization we have going on. So when we will eventually get to a point where we require to lift off from our planet. And I would say what it would mean is that it's the evolution of a city. Right now, cities are like a normal city, then, and we would say it's like a city becoming intelligent, right? What would an intelligent city be? Intelligence means the ability you have to respond to your environment. That means if you're in Pompeii and there's a volcano, you know, erupting, you get out of there. The intelligence of the city will be a city that could jump. Imagine the city, like volcano, like lava was coming down to the city, and the whole city could literally leap like a couple kilometers to the other side, like 1 kilometer to the other side or something. So that would be an evolution of the city. The city was just ground-based. Now it's, let's say, a city that's mobile first on the ground, then a jumping city. Then what did I say before another time? Magnetic. We have the magnetic cities that can't fly away from the earth, but they can't land, they can't fall down on the earth, you know? So strategy of building sky cities is just building land in the sky that nothing happens to, and then we build the city on that land. Like, that's a strategy. So anyways, from the magnetic city, we evolve the magnetic city like a Pokemon evolves into a sky city. A sky city is more and more, we are trying to make an interstellar sized ship, pretty much. That's the aim. A sky city, what am I saying? Excuse my language. A sky city. If sky cities are efficiently designed, they won't be what I called it a second ago. So the evolution of the sky of the magnetic city is to the proper sky city, which can be mobile and which can move. Now the evolution of the sky city is the interstellar, where we're living in our orbit, right? And then beyond that, it's like we can live anywhere in the solar system. That would be like best case scenario. That means right now, like, you can say in the future, like, the wealthiest human beings are going to be like, yo, I got a house on Jupiter, you know, how about that? You know, on a moon on Jupiter, you know. they would talk that way. So anyways, that's the evolution of the city. So as the location, city is where the main event, you can say, is happening. The main intellectual effort of the species. So if our future is beyond our atmosphere, then we can choose. We can choose to bypass what is unnecessary. Do you know what that means? It's as if, like, I don't know how to say it, but in all these stages of evolution that I'm just sharing as a model, human behavior is different. What can be said? about the temporary in an eternal space. Eventually, we will transcend humanism. It's like, what else can we do? We will repeat the pattern until we have seen enough out of it. You know, it's like, in a strange way, you can say a multidimensional intelligence or a universal intelligence, or whatever way you like to put it in language. And intelligence is training. And it's as if the rise and fall of civilization seems to be a strange activity of the earth. The species requires to be capable of communicating with everything and nothing. We communicate to nothing by exploration. We communicate to everything through honoring its value. That means it's as if a person can't communicate to a human being even if they don't consider even who's in front of them as human, you know? And the issue is this lack of discrimination between the inner realms. The moment the human being can discriminate between the inner and outer realms, I am telling you, all the isms, racism, sexism, whatever ism you can fathom in those you know, discriminatory contexts, it would be, they would all leave. We would suddenly realize every moment where there is one person, there is two rooms. That means a person can be alone in a room, but there's technically two. The person's not alone in one room. That means the outer realms echo into our inner realms, you know. That means if I'm giving a talk and I don't know, there's an eagle outside of my window. Let's say just an eagle just flying outside of my window. It would be a situation where that input from the outer realms can't be ignored. Right? So it's like the outer realms is information you have to process, you have to look at. As if this biomechanism that we are has no other option, you know. That means I ask myself, what is life? And it's like when my eyes open in the morning, the keys are in the ignitions, you know, something is, some force is there, then this force, let's say it like this, there was force, some sort of intelligent force. This intelligent force named itself, right? And then after naming itself, defined itself, started telling a story, you know. So before stories, there was just concepts. Then we had moving concepts, which became stories. You know, all language is, how can I say it? It is like it's a photo. It's a photo on a wall. It's like a photo. It's like a character in a photograph is suddenly realizing, like, life is not a photograph. It's not a frame. It's not one moment's value. One moment's value. It is the whole journey's value. To really have a psychology, think of like what human, if we were teleported, if we were living in sky cities. I mean, these are all crucial things, right? Our intelligence allows us to see further ahead, right? And so it's like poor sociology students in university, what are they being taught rather than wondering about the true future of the species? You know, it's as if people have been afraid. You know, it's like when you're afraid of the past, you don't change. When you're afraid of the future, you don't change. You know? And you know, it's as if like the past and future, like let's say a person wears a seatbelt, that L shape of the seatbelt is like the past and future, and the present is like that moment where you click it and the past and future, the seatbelt it goes off, you know. Honestly, the future is the potential of the past. The past is the memory of the future. The future is the potential of the past is the potential of the future. So, in this life, I would say, if we are multidimensional, strategy can't be material. And so the Stoic philosophers caught on to this, right? Because for them, they saw something about like the path to enlightenment not just being what a person knows, you know, not just being information, being behavior, how you were informed while you were alive. We have those of the likes of Epictetus who say, we suffer not from the events inside our lives, but from the judgments we have about them. Right? As if, again, the Stoics noticed the inner realm and outer realm distinction, and any society that can't discriminate the inner realm and outer realm and doesn't even permit the possibility for the ability to discriminate, it's as if when we don't know where we are, we can't do anything. People are in two rooms. One room where everybody's physical existence is in, and then a room where nobody sees. That's where the true self is hiding. The true self is the inner realm. A man by the name of Shri Nisargadatta Maharaj, a yogi, liberated yogi, he says, as if the progression towards the absolute, that as if, think of it, many human beings on this planet care for knowledge, and some human beings out of those human beings who cared for knowledge cared for the absolute, the ultimate knowledge. That means it's like the being is alive and it's like, okay, what is the most ultimate thing I can do here, right? And it was from an outer realm journey coming to the inner realms. It's like, how do we tell the world it's already being the world before names? I can say that when the discrimination of the inner realms and outer realms arises, the being in the moment will notice that all suffering that is an inner event overlaid upon the outer event can instantly change. But all suffering that is based on the outer realm event, that suffering must be in an outer way responded to, or it will keep projecting it in the inner realm. That means when in Rome, be Roman. When in the outer realms, be an object in your conscious waking state. When in a dream state, relax, because it's a whole, your body is subjective. And the biggest clue that consciousness is beyond subjects, I shouldn't say consciousness, that true enlightenment is beyond subjects, before I finish that Sri Nisargadatta quote, I gotta say this, is that in the dream state, there is a watcher. That means we are an unknown watcher in the conscious waking state, and we are an unknown watcher in the dream state. In the dream state, when actually, like, when a person's actually dreaming, it's the mind moving, right? We say it's mental activity, the dream, right? So the dream is mind content. Now, if the dream is mind content and there's an unknown watcher to the mind content, that means we are even beyond our mind, the mystery of our awareness. That means all those people who are, I don't know, somehow going to learn from the self-help industry how to control their mind. It's like you are beyond it, even in the dream state. The watcher, the unknown watcher is there. Because without the unknown watcher, knowledge can't move. Shri Nisargadatta Maharaj, now I can say it. He says, first the I am myself comes. That means when a being enters this realm, first the I am myself comes. Then the I am myself goes. Then the I am all comes. Then the I am all goes. Then the I am comes. Then the I am goes. Then nature is. That means now there is even an evolution for the love of the eyes of man, where we just were loving the observable universe. We were loving the conditional. The roar of the soul in modern society now is to love the unknown. There is no other way to the mystical, no other proper way to the mystical. And you know, this may be a very intense thing I'm going to say right now, but I feel God is the ego, is the metaphor for the ego. And it's the biggest truth, because the ego, even though we conceive it, because it changes, it's the watcher. What watches the person all the time? The idea of them. That means it's as if mind, the reality of this world is, it's the speed we're going now. If things were sped up, there would be a totally different rhythm of intelligence here on this planet. We prepare for the geometrical era by freeing ourselves and realizing we're not thoughts. When we realize we're not thoughts, we will wonder what else we can be. And this is the point in, this has yet to happen, but I feel it should. And what it is that geometry needs to branch out, geometry needs to separate from mathematics, and it needs to be changed. Where mathematics is a branch of geometry and everything in existence has geometry, whether through a numerical value or not. That means the geometrical language surpasses mathematical language. Geometry must be freed from mathematics and become its own field. That's the biggest key push of the, I would say, into the geometrical evolution. The cyberspace, Mecca, then Interstellar, then beyond Interstellar towards the inconceivable. So I would say that there's a quote I've shared in the description of this episode. The quote says, Rumi, it's a quote by the poet Rumi from 700 years ago. He says, when I die, I shall soar with angels blessed. When I die, I shall soar with angels. And when I die to the angels, what I shall become you cannot imagine. You see, we are evolving beyond the imagination. So pour out your imagination as much as you can, whoever you are that's alive right now. When I say pour out your imagination, this doesn't mean being ignorant of reality. Guys, in the chat section, what I see the comment. What I'm saying is, I'm saying that it was a metaphor. You see, because the question comes like this is where monotheistic religions divide from polytheistic traditions, where in monotheism everything is God's, God, comma S. Okay. But in polytheism, everything is God's. What that means is there is an ownership of personality in one sense. It's as if the truth is personal in one view, in another way it's impersonal. So in yogic thought, they were like, what is moving the ego? How is the ego spontaneously moving? That is a source truth. So a source truth would be like, do you see what I'm saying? That means the ego, what moved the ego before the ego moved itself was kind of like God is the hand in the glove is not the glove. So if the glove is the ego, the hand is that which is beyond. I feel if we zoomed in on every human being, we would find dimensions of life that are not per se human, and I don't want to say they're non-human, but they're just like there is no identity. You know, that's the thing about emotions. Like when a person has an emotion, it's like they don't need the reasoning. The emotion is some sort of input on its own, right? But if you bring the implement the reasoning and the emotion, that means the emotion is like a way as a being you receive feedback, and then the self-analysis becomes another. Anyways, it's all about the evolution of the attention beyond the body, and before it goes completely beyond the body, it's going to experience multiple bodyhood. That's reasonable. And beyond multiple locations of experience, we become the world. So it is technically the emergence. We were like gods in nature. Then we became we became man in creation. Now we're in nature. Now we are becoming gods in cyberspace. Let's say in the future we're going to become gods in cyberspace, and then we're going to become creators in cyberspace. You see, the most important thing that human beings need to do is to remember their being as they live for humanity. I can't fathom anything else we can do on this planet. You know, it's like, what are the options? We all destroy each other, we do nothing, or we do something. You know, these are the three options. We have to request Brahman's assistance for the modern phase. That means imagine that humanity suddenly realized not the laws of nature were intelligent. And imagine if the person spoke, imagine to gravity. This is a very abstract concept, but imagine we had the shamanic view that it has a spirit. That to movement there is attached animate, some sort of animate force giver. You know, we must free ourselves from ourselves. Eventually, multidimensionality is just gonna happen. It's just where we're headed. This multidimensionalism is gonna echo in every corner of the person's life, you know? You can't have an experience and not have the overall view of your reality like realigned. It's like we are lying to ourselves as creatures to search for truth, to have something to do in a vacuum. Truth is like exploration ultimately. That means, imagine like children in the future, all that they are told by the parents of the future generation is that nobody knows yet, go explore, the universe is too big, you know? And children would be like, okay, you know, for the advance of life. You know, I was thinking of another way we could think of for the cyberspace. I'm going to use Shakespeare quote, like a Shakespeare quote, to kind of again explain these phases. Right now we are at the to be or not to be phase of language. Okay, to be identity, to be a thought or not to be a thought. Then it's going to go to be a shape or not to be a shape. Then it's going to go to be a program or not to be a program. Or I would say to be digitalized or not to be digitalized. Then it's going to be to be human or to not be human. When we get to that level, that is the, and this is I feel it's ahead of my time, but I feel this would be the most incredible chapter for philosophers in human history. When we get to the point is, where is the edge of the human idea? If we could create an evolutionary chart that would, let's say an evolutionary spectrum, okay, where we're going from the beginning of time to the end of time, and let's say at the end of time we're super advanced, at the beginning of time we were primitive, right? So imagine who the yogis were, let's say 10,000 years ago, the inspirations of the Patanjali Yoga Sutras and whatnot. So we can, let's say, what the yogis were, the mystics. The mystics were beings that were not afraid of the other faces of the world. I would say if we could go from the future to the past, what in our future, in the interstellar era, is gonna be pilots. Imagine someone in the future coming and recruiting pilots for interstellar travel. Imagine an interstellar air force. Or space force, or whatever we're going to call In one of my science fiction novels, I wrote global interstellar unit. But anyways, when we get to that point, those people in our future who are going to be pilots, attempting to go faster than the speed of light beyond our atmosphere, if we went back like an evolutionary chart, they would be the yogis that were first experiencing silence. You see, the world is not a multidimensional being, is preparing for all dimensions. But the identity of the being in a single dimension, in a single room of this cosmic mansion, can only prepare for what it sees, right? And it's hilarious. We say we gotta see it to believe it, but then there's magic shows and optical illusions. It's hilarious, you know? It's like, I gotta see it to believe it, but then we clap for the magic show that we have no clue how it happened, you know? So we are literally left in the void, wondering, where do we put the reference of reality? Where do we put the first point, that center of, where do we centralize reality? And we must centralize reality in human nature. That means I don't care what kind of dogmas in the future bark. It's just that any ideological system that doesn't care for human biology and is not life sensitive, I will tell you, it's going to get purified out of humanity. You see, it's enough of ideological games. Every human being has to realize they are unknown, others are unknown, others are also unknown to themselves, you know, and what others see is unknown. And in the middle of this unknown, giant unknown event, that's really honestly what it is, right? Like, forget every person and just realize we're in a universal event. It's happening now, you know? That means I was shy to give PowerPoint presentations when I was in grade 10. Now I laugh. I laugh because I realize, why am I shy? The performance has begun. The moment I wake up, my existence is moving, right? It's like the pilot is in liftoff. So you see, what I want to see is not just advanced physical movement. Pretty much those who do calisthenics and parkour, those guys pretty much reach the epitome of, you know, physical movement, right? But I'm going to say, like, even martial artists, they came to that conclusion of how able the body can be, you know? But now we have to wonder about the mind, you know? It's not just like, what are people's bodies doing, just existing? It's like, how's the experience being piloted? And how much do people care about intelligence? That means the first question should be, what is intelligence? And the person shouldn't ask any question after, or they shouldn't even search for truth before looking at that word. Because at some point there has to come an experiential dimension. I can't emphasize this enough. That I'm here just, you know, being Sir Talks-a-Lot, but at the round table, but language is it is our greatest technology, yet if misused, our greatest tragedy. You know, technology and tragedy both start with a T, and someone may be like, so what? You know? And I would say one point in common, one possibility in common. You know, like, the person has to forgive themselves and allow themselves, just like an astronaut getting out of a suit. You know, freedom. people don't respect themselves, because if they did, they would notice they were unknown. And if they were honest with themselves, realizing they're unknown, they would totally see knowledge as if there's a wilderness, as if it's a jungle. It's a jungle, and all knowledge is the machete and flashlight in your hand, and the person's going towards terra incognita, wondering about what human eyes have not landed on, you know? For me, we don't do it, but the secular culture should treat inventors as like prophets. It is the closest thing, I would say, it's the closest thing to divinity, the bringer of novelty. The bringer of novelty is the state. That is where the advanced communicator and the advanced communication of the universal sector are remembered as one moment. You know, we free ourselves from the language we have worn for so long as a presence of attention, you know. And here's the cool thing, because everybody has their own eyes, that means the journey to freedom, if it's within, nobody can go. Nobody can reverse engineer your sight tunnel. Only the person. It has to be the presence. And there is, I will tell you, in this world, there's so many systems that promise salvation. It's hilarious. It's as if, like, the moment man believed heaven, you know, there were marketers. They're like, yo, man, people believe in heaven. Let's start selling it. Go, 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 go. We started selling heaven. And then we treated, oh, man, we don't like this product. That's I'm going to share a story here. It's an old story. There were these two, you can say, snake oil salesmen, and people had caught on to them, and so the snake oil salesmen were looking for their next gig. These two snake oil salesmen suddenly realized that people in the village believe in heaven, so they set up a table and they act like they're real estate agents. And they're like, all right, people, you know, come and buy your houses in the afterlife. You know, we can sell, we're selling houses, real estate in heaven. And people in the village, even you can say the rich people in the village who think like they're the peak of intelligence, they're like, okay, of course, I'm so rich, why not? I'll buy real estate in heaven. You know, what's the loss? You know, so people start buying literally, and so there's a lineup, and when couple people, big people do it, then everybody starts freaking out and doing it, you know. So these people are literally, they have pieces of paper and they're like, okay, this kind of real estate, this is literally, they're selling imagination on paper. Not even with poetry even. There's a guy in the village who catches on to this. He realizes this is nonsense. It doesn't even make sense selling real estate in heaven. Even if you believe in heaven, you can't even have any, through that lens, even theological lens, a logical reasoning for it, right? I mean, of course, you can never have a logical reasoning for heaven, but but what I'm saying is that one guy catches on to this. And he goes up to the two people, and so many people have lined up, and so many people have bought the, this snake oil of heaven, real estate. And so what happens is this guy goes to the snake oil salesman, and he says, "How you guys shouldn't do this," or like he starts complaining. He says, "How dare you guys do this? You know, you can't sell heaven. Why are you guys acting like God? You know, you guys are sinners right now. You know." And the snake oil salesmen are like, buddy, so many people have bought it. Of course it's true. You're insane. The crowd wins. Get out of here. You know? And the guy suddenly is like, this is ridiculous. He goes to the crowd and he's like, people, don't buy this. What are you doing? You know, how do you even know? You know, how do you even know what you're buying? people don't listen. People are like, get out of here, man. The most famous people are buying this. You know, you think we're not gonna do it? You know, they have so much resources. They have so much wisdom. You know, you know, we're just like the sheep that follow. You know, wherever we're being led. So it becomes a situation. Where the guy realizes he can't do anything. They're selling heaven on paper. And so the guy's like, all right, there must be a way. He goes forth and he goes to talk to the guys again. Suddenly he gets an idea midway. He's like, okay, you guys are right. You know, you guys are right. The crowd is right. I want to actually buy real estate in heaven. And the snake oil salesman in their heads, they're like, oh my God, this guy's a dumbass. Okay. And so they're like, okay, man, you know, sure, you check out our portfolio, and they show all these random like pictures they've drawn on paper, you know. And then the guy suddenly says, are you selling anywhere else real estate? And the person's like, what do you mean? Right? It's like, can I buy hell? This guy who tried to wake people up, you know, he's gone to the snake oil salesman, and he says, can I buy hell? Right? And then the guy's like, nobody wants to buy hell, man. You want to go to hell? What's wrong with you? You know, even the snake oil salesman's feeling sorry. Even it's like, this guy wants to buy hell. You know, what's wrong with him? You know. So this guy says, I want to buy all of hell. How much? Whatever. Just say the price. I'll buy. Right? And the guy looks at him. It's like, okay, this guy wants to go to hell. So they're like, okay, it's called. Let's say they say like a ridiculous price, right? A high price, right? And the guy's like, okay. Excuse me. And so the guy buys all of hell, and it's written with their stamp and certificate and all of this, right? The guy goes to the people in the crowd, and the snake oil salesman feels something's off. And the guy says, hey everybody, I just purchased hell. I purchased all of hell right now. And people are like, so what? You know? And then he says, so I'm not letting anybody in. So everybody is forced to go to heaven. And everybody is shocked, and the snake oil salesman is shocked. And that's the thing, the line ends, and people are like, if this guy's bought, and they're like, show us your certificate, and the guy shows whatever, the paper or whatever, you know? And he's like, yeah, it's even snaked by that. And the snake oil salesman are like, oh my God, you know? So it's reached, the guy, you know, his eyes were open before they were closed. And that is the only victory we can achieve here. And it's like language is replacing experience. You know, it's as if how do you tell a species to return to its multidimensional wilderness? To not give in to the language of the embarment. This is the era of the language wars, you know, where it's like the person has to be mindful. The discrimination between the inner realm and the outer realm. If you think you're a language, your inner realm gets thrown around by the outer realm like a giant playing with your earth. But once you become the giant, then you do not play with the earth anymore. You see, that's the elegance, you know. That means if even from a theological lens we see like suffering in the world, it's as if this is what the Creator deserved. This is literally the karma of the causal intelligence of everything. If we were to give it a personality, keep the theological lens. And so this is what they will, the educational system needs such reform that they can't teach literally, right? Because they have a curriculum, they can't ask the students to explore and find new concepts, right? So it's as if a lot of paper is being wasted on just children in the educational system repeating the past. Like, it's just the way the educational system is designed, right? It's like they teach you the past, then you go and you see the world has changed. Like the world before you entered, you know, and then after you leave has totally changed. And so we have created a system where survival it's easier to follow than to innovate. We need innovation, pretty much. We need some sort of revolution where it's like, I don't know, neo-philosophers are running in the streets with their lanterns, which are neon lights or whatever, bought on Amazon. You know, and being like, people, wake up from yourselves. You see, it's like, if the person is what can I say, really? We're using language right now, we're using, let's say, our biological existence as a technology for our unknown attention in the moment. Let's say our mind is our subjective technology. So we have mind-made technologies, inner realm technology, inner technologies, and outer technologies. Outer technologies, I would encourage people to check out TED Talks from Ray Kurzweil. You see, we have to become conscious of our space, and we have to be conscious not just as a human, the individual human being, what's in our space or how we're being space, but to be conscious of what is in the space of the species, right? As the civilization advances, it's like as the light in the room increases, all that was in the shadows will come to light, right? So there is no instant teleportation into advancement. It is a journey in the outer realms. In the outer realms, we got to build it. You know, it's like a person can read an IKEA instruction book, you know, and visualize, like they can just see even, excuse me. It's like you can see the design, like the architect can see the building in his inner realms, but he has not made the building in the outer realms. And right now we're 8 billion human beings that each has their own random viewpoint on the world. So we require to at least care to bring about a conscious system. And how we can create healthy collective conscious movements is movements that allow evacuation. So we treat right now, it's a strange time where honestly, whether it's ancient religions, modern religions, whatever, right? It's an ideological hunger game, okay? Where it's like all religions are trying to bring, instead of the religious mindset, realizing it is a member of human civilization. That means to be religious is to be a type of human a member of a human species, right? So it's like when the inner realm ideology becomes way more superior, a superior truth than the outer realms, then the person has to become a tyrant. Why? Because that's the only way you can stay like your inner realms, you know? So the psychology of the human being has to feel like a pilot at best. A pilot that when a person is stressed or depressed or whatever, watch that moment. Literally sit still for 10 to 20 minutes and watch how the mind is happening, and how the mind is happening as your moment. You know, for me, it's like a hobby of mine. Whenever I have to wait, I wonder how my senses are being processed. It's like, okay, I get it that, you know, the brain receives it, but the brain, unless it's seeded with intelligence and updating intelligence, it's as if like, it's weird. It's as if the potential of our ancestors is echoing on through us and beyond us. So we are the echoing potential of the human idea's ultimate advancement beyond all systems of value. Really, we're a creature living in a value system right now. Now, when we become the ultimate value, what system? We are it. Now, metaphysical ideologies are very supreme. When I say supreme, mysticism and yoga, these are supreme ideas. Why? Because in their supremacy, they are kind of like you can say the Upanishads are not for human beings. It's for the gods that look through human eyes, poetically speaking. We should expect such an advanced civilization that even if there was a being like that, we could communicate to. That's the ability of the human beings. We are friendly engagers, you know. That means if an extraterrestrial being comes, like the best thing we can do is like welcome it to tea or something, you know, to show the true nature of our species, not its artificial urge, you know. There is an artificial urge in the human being ever since survival. It's like if the person just has a physiological analysis of life, you don't need to think about morality. You could literally live like an animal. You could go and Tarzan it out your whole life, you know. All the people who are violent in civilization or you have violent urges, literally you can go and live like Tarzan, you know, and it's like you'll get way more violence than you ever would have found in the streets of neighborhoods or whatever, right? If the person wants to walk towards that way, if the person wants to live as a mind, then it has to, at some point, the person has to honor the simplicity of intelligence before looking at its complex levels. That means some people try to be the expert, and there are some people who realize only when you have become the real fool, you get to see the real truth, I would say. Alright guys, my relaxation in the chat section says good job not paying attention to the chat. I think you don't understand what good is, but I'm joking with you. So okay guys, I'll fly to the chat section branch for a moment. Yeah, so guys, please ask me to look at the chat section when there's a question, okay? Anyways, where can this go? Where can the human idea go? That's the responsibility of every explorer. If we take the consideration that we are our world, will be defined by it. That means if a person thinks they're their jacket and it rains, they're gonna feel like they're getting wet. You know? Language is clothing for the mind, honestly. And when we realize the mind, regardless of how it's clothed, for just its existence in the moment, there is a naked truth to the realm. There's something happening in this world that when a person notices how odd it is, they awaken to really more than how energy has occurred through them so far. You know, I asked the Logos one night, poetically in my inner realms, that what is the aim? That means is it just expressionism? That means does it matter what we do or does it not matter? You know. And there was a sentence that came which was nothing is ever lost. Nothing is lost. It's just not found yet. That means it could be in the future there will be technologies of a collective timeless humanity where we will be able to immortalize everybody in history. Like we will be able to reanimate every part of history as if that energetic imprint is somewhere in the void. I feel, guys, for some reason to go into a Plato quote tunnel. So, a quote tunnel is just a segment of the show where I read a bunch of quotes. Or as the French say, quote. I'm joking. Alright, let's do this. Plato says wise men speak because they have something to say, fools because they have to say something. Plato says one of the penalties for refusing to participate in politics is that you end up being governed by your inferiors. Plato says we can easily forgive a child who's afraid of the dark. The real tragedy of life is when men are afraid of the light. Wow. Yeah. It's too easy to be afraid of the dark, you know? Can you imagine they ask the person, you know, how did you get over not being afraid of the dark? And the person's like, I got bored. It was just boring after a while. It's like, how do you surpass your fear? It got boring. Plato says, human behavior flows from three main sources: desire, emotion, and knowledge. The wisdom of the ancients was so ahead of their time, even ahead of our time. Plato says, music is a moral law. It gives soul to the universe, wings to the mind, flight to the imagination, and charm and gaiety to life and to everything. Plato says the beginning is the most important part of the work. This is a huge principle in Zen as well, where they say when you want to climb a mountain, start at the top. That means if the igniting energy or the first step of the soul into the outer realms is not to itself advanced, the outer realms is going to define it. That means though, if the person, it's as if trusting the moment, then moving, rather than moving, then hoping to trust it one day. You know? You know, because if we really didn't want to trust things, if we really wanted to be doubter, we can doubt anything. You know, that means somebody could be like, hey man, this coffee cup is on the table, and we could be like, no, I doubt it. You know, and they'll be like, how can you doubt this coffee cup on the table, you know, even when you touch it and hold it? And the answer is that we can doubt existence, as simple as that. It's so easy to be dismissive, it's harder to integrate though. Plato says thinking, the talking of the soul with itself. Plato says there are two things a person should never be angry at: what they can help and what they cannot. Plato says a hero is born among 100, a wise man is found among 1,000, but an accomplished one might not be found even among 100,000 men. The school of Athens was so next level, guys. Plato says, he who is not a good servant will not be a good master. That means it's like, it makes sense that the person, there was another quote by George Patano, I believe. He says, you must serve before you command. This is the key to training. You know, you can say a person like martial artists training in the forest, they're serving. They're serving their skill, their ability, the spirit of their craft. Beyond the ignorance of the desire of a power in a temporary world. If it was about power, then if we were immortal, power would make sense as a philosophy. But because we're temporary, power, like for a person to act powerful, it's like, it's hilarious. It's like an unknown being, you know, just being cruel before it ends. Like, it's like there's something that efficiency can be an instantly different chess move. Anyways, Plato says the first and greatest victory is to conquer yourself. To be conquered by yourself is of all things most shameful and vile. Yeah, that means man up, civilization. It's too easy to feel we are out of control, you know. It's like nature is honestly, like, so many things are automated. It's like we have a little bit, it's like the responsibility the responsibility of our ego is so minuscule compared to the responsibility of, like, Billy over here, you know, orbiting planets for a living, you know. In the wallpaper. Plato says, at the touch of love, everyone becomes a poet. Plato says there are three classes of men. Lovers of wisdom, lovers of honor, and lovers of gain. Plato says courage is knowing what not to fear. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. I wish I'd heard this quote lifetimes ago. Lifetimes ago when I didn't exist, guys. You know, the good old days. Plato says, dictatorship naturally arises out of democracy, and the most aggravated form of tyranny and slavery out of the most extreme liberty. Yeah, you know, this is not, it's not that it arises, I mean, it arises, but it's a cyclical nature. It's like what Plato is saying here about collective group psychology and, I don't know, the evolution of nationalism based on the human being's activity in it. It's like only an eternal being, like, can be compassionate if you think about it. Because a temporary being has endless reasons to take than give. We have built a civilization where right now the concept of stealing exists. Imagine it was in a civilization where giving, it's like you couldn't give, there was so much giving going on, every being was just giving so much, you know, that it was as if it's like, sir, it's like you can't give after this much amount of giving, you know, like you would get fined if you gave too much. There was so much giving going on, right? So I'm saying it's as if it's like everything that's inefficient in our moment, we can wonder about the reverse. That will give us a fresh start. From that fresh start there, we can build the momentum of wondering what system there is. That means knowledge can be extracted out of anywhere, just like an archaeologist blowing the dust on, I don't know, like an old shoe. Noob archaeology problems, yeah. Noob archaeologist problem. Anyways, Plato says, the measure of a man is what he does with power. Of course, the measure of every being. But of course, man is a conscious being. Like the word man, it's not even just the body. It's like you can say it is the momentum of a species, a phase of a species' evolution. Plato says there will be no end to the troubles of states or of humanity itself till philosophers become kings in this world, or till those we now call kings and rulers really and truly become philosophers, and political power and philosophy thus come into the same hands. And guys, keep in mind, at this point there isn't science like we know at this time. This is what many people don't know. Science is, like, the father of science was philosophy and mathematics. Like, philosophy and mathematics had a child, and that was science. Okay? So science branched out of philosophy, because you can say philosophy began as a response to why language is even moving as us, or why are we even moving as it. The philosopher king, that's hilarious. The philosopher can't be a king because they can't wonder what a king is. They're like, okay, before I can be a king, what is a king? And then the philosophies can go ad infinitum. You know, it's like the philosopher king can never know he's a king. So there can never be a philosopher king, you know, that knows that they're a philosopher king. Yeah. Oh man. My humor's out of control. So Plato says if a man neglects education, he walks lame to the end of his life. So Plato's saying, don't be lame. Plato says when the mind is thinking, it is talking to itself. Yeah, I read that. Plato says to love rightly is to love what is orderly and beautiful in an educated and disciplined way. Plato says knowledge which is acquired under compulsion obtains no hold on the mind. This is another way of saying you can't force feed a person, right? But the educational system is force feeding information, right? Rather than inciting the child to become an explorer of humanity. That means it's like, forget every teacher you've had, forget every type of student you have been. It's like the explorer era of intelligence now. We're like multidimensional beings, kind of like slowly waking up to how language isn't the only program we're moving in. Plato says for a man to conquer himself is the first and noblest of all victories. That means strength is no longer display of animal gorilla-like power, you know? Strength is the one who is mindful. That means, like, I'll tell you a good story here, Zen story. There was this warlord, and this warlord hated monks. He's like, it's a waste of time, you know, it's a waste of life, you know. And this warlord had decided to kill all the monks in the land. He'd just given the order, and his generals would go into, or whatnot, his right hand, like his commanders would go and you know, pillage the monasteries or whatever, you know. And so a lot of the young monks were like, this is messed up, we're all gonna go in the mountains. Now it comes to one town. It came to one town where one of the commanders, like the warlord, is just walking to see what's going on, and he walks, as he's walking, like one of his commanders runs up to him and he's like, sir, we got a problem. And what the problem is, that out of all the monks in the temples, this really old monk with, like, imagine like old monk, white beard, and I don't know, curtain eyebrows, or and so this old monk is just sitting there peacefully on the grass in front of the temple and just watching the moment. And so the warlord gets angry and he says, why haven't you killed him yet? And the commander says, he's really old. He's so old that no soldier wants to kill just an old man because of superstition or whatever. And so the warlord gets angry and he says, take me to this person, you know. And he gets pointed that way, and what happens is there's this scene where the warlord's just angry. He's gripping the the grip of his sword with fury, and he says, "Monk, get up!" And the monk gets up, and he says, "Come here," and he walks towards the monk, and they, like, if there was a cameraman, the cameraman's like in the middle of the scene. The warlord shouts and he says, "Do you know who I am?" to the monk, and the monk is just standing there, Intense moment. The monk is just present. The warlord says, "Do you know who I am? I can have my sword in your stomach in an instant." He says it with more fury, though. The warlord says, "I can have my sword in your stomach in an instant," and it's just this intense moment where you can see egoic power try to show that this is my house, this is my world. It's like, I am not in your world, you are in my world, like that kind of rage. The monk looks at this, angry soul, this lost soul, and he says, "Do you know who I am? I can have your sword in my stomach in an instant. I can have your sword in my stomach in an instant." And he just smiles. And it's like it's not fearlessness in the eyes of the monk. It is supreme serenity. It is the pure lands. Guys, imagine in the story the warlord shouts, "Get up, monk!" And the monk's like, "I'm already standing, bro. What's wrong with you?" Guys, before I'm going to read a few more quotes from Plato, then I'm just going to read some quotes about the imagination. Plato says the greatest wealth is to live content with little. This means, and I would say anybody who looks at life through a beautiful lens, that means you just be like, okay, it's like I'm on this roller coaster ride. Let me see the greatness that is allowed. Believe it or not, I've had moments where I don't advise others perhaps to do this until intuitively driven, but I've had moments of inner realm, you can say, shouts at the sky, prayers towards the sky, or like you can say commands in the void. where I've asked as if any karma, good, like, this is a strange thing to say and share really, but I'll say it just because I might even hear this talk in the future. Where it's as if you're like, you find yourself in an existential field, and it's like, may the potential karma of any moment arise now. I mean, this is pretty vague for the audience what I'm saying, but anyways. Plato says ignorance, the root and stem of all evil. Plato says people are like dirt. They can either nourish you and help you grow as a person, or they can stunt your growth and make you wilt and die. Oh my god. But Plato says every heart sings a song, incomplete, until another heart whispers back. Those who wish to sing always find a song. At the touch of a lover, everyone becomes a poet. Plato says death is not the worst that can happen to man. Wow. I feel this is one of those quotes that will go in the future in the museum of great human language. Death is not the worst that can happen to man. You know, and you could totally see a sort of stoic dimension here. It's like the virtue to the moment is not just the story, what part of the story we find ourselves in. It's like how we journeyed into the story. Plato says attention to health is life's greatest hindrance. Plato says opinion is the medium between knowledge and ignorance. Plato says when the tyrant has disposed of foreign enemies by conquest or treaty and there's nothing more to fear from them, then he's always stirring up some war or other in order that the people may require a leader. That's the danger of fear. Fear is like a swamp. Plato says a good decision is based on knowledge and not on numbers. Plato says justice in the life and conduct of the state is possible only as first it resides in the heart and souls of the citizens. There you go. It's like we can't have a peaceful civilization if there's no peaceful people around, you know? Plato, I don't know if I read this, I think I did, but I'll read it again. Plato says opinion is the medium between knowledge and ignorance. And it's the imagination, and then honestly beyond the imagination, you know, it's like what story you want to hear. It's like beyond imagination, there's no longer lullabies of belief systems going on, yeah. So check this out. Tim O'Brien says fantasy has a dark side to it. It also has a light hemisphere, the power of the human imagination. To keep going, to imagine a better tomorrow. Guys, in this show called Attack on Titan, I'm going to say it, like there was a character called Commander Erwin. And Commander Erwin, he says this thing where he said, somebody says, what is the meaning of life? Is life meaningless? And he's like, no, our meaning is that we live for those who will understand the meaning one day. We live for the potential of our species, even if we feel the species has abandoned us, or even if we feel we have abandoned ourselves. You know, that you still honor the potential of the species, which means behaviorally, instantly we can pilot, you know. Edmund Wilson says the human imagination has already come to conceive the possibility of recreating human society. Christina Koch says, I have truly been inspired by the struggle and triumphs of so many women that dare to break new ground in all aspects of society, and those who have pushed the boundaries of human imagination. William Godwin, what a unique name. William Godwin says there's nothing that human imagination can figure. Brilliant and enviable that human genius and skill do not aspire to realize. You see, everything is a victory of the human species. It doesn't matter what it is, it's the human movement is efficient. It can be efficient. Bernard Werber says the best way to renew thought is to go outside the human imagination. Jacob Bronowski says we are all afraid for our confidence for the future, for the world. That is the nature of the human imagination. Yet every man, every civilization has gone forward because of its engagement with what it has set itself to do. Pretty much Jacob Bronowski is saying the civilization should stay true to its goals. Amy Gerstler says the human imagination can connect to practically anything. Brenda Laurel says reality has always been too small for the human imagination. We're always trying to transcend. Luigi Pirandello says nature uses human imagination to lift her work of creation to even higher levels. Incredible. Mario would be so proud right now. This is, I'm joking, yes, this is an incredible quote. George Orwell says, if you want a vision of the future, imagine a boot stamping on a human face forever wish. Okay, George Orwell was having a bad day. Robin Williams, you're only given a little spark of madness. You mustn't lose it. Michelangelo says, I saw the angel in the marble and carved until I set him free. Gilbert K. Chesterton, there are no rules of architecture for a castle in the clouds. This is automatically my favorite quote. One of my favorites. George Louis Borge says, I have always imagined that paradise will be a kind of library. Michelangelo, every block of stone has a statue inside it, and it is the task of the sculptor to discover. Albert Einstein says, logic will get you from A to B, imagination will take you everywhere. So imagination is like teleportation, you know. Elizabeth Bowen says one can live in the shadow of an idea without grasping it. Malcolm Gladwell, the visionary starts with a clean sheet of paper and reimagines the world. Pablo Picasso, everything you can imagine is real. In the inner realms, I would say. Jean-Jacques Rousseau, the world of reality has its limits. The world of imagination is boundless. Excuse me. To invent, you need a good imagination and a pile of junk. Yeah, so if the world it becomes a messy place, we got to use that mess to build clarity. We got to recycle ignorance into clarity somehow. Dr. Seuss, think left and think right, and think low and think high. Oh, the things you can think up if only you try. I'm really considering this isn't Dr. Seuss speaking. But interesting commentary. Interesting quote. Joseph Joubert says, imagination is the eye of the soul. I think what Dr. Seuss is trying in that quote is he's trying to draw the picture. He's saying the edges of movement, right? So he's saying you can go and all the types of views you can have on all these possibilities. And Joseph Joubert, when he says imagination is the eye of the soul, I mean, yeah, imagination is between the unknown and the known, and reality we're for now saying is just the known. Mark Chagall says, if I create from the heart, nearly everything works. If from the head, almost nothing. I mean, here's the thing. I would say every human being has their own kind of karma, let's say, the way their moment is happening. So to cultivate, it's like there's no way unless the person, like, energy has to come from within towards the outer realms, you know, and then it's like I don't know, some sort of mastery is cultivated, intuitive mastery or trust with the moment. Mark Twain says you can't depend on your eyes when your imagination is out of focus. So yeah, you can. I think I read that too fast. Yeah. Quincy Jones says, imagine what a harmonious world it could be if every single person, both young and old, shared a little of what he is good at doing. Vernon Howard says, learn to see things as they really are, not as we imagine they are. Alexander Chase says, the most imaginative people are the most credulous. For them, everything is possible. Isaac Newton says a man may imagine things that are false, but he can only understand things that are true. For if the things be false, the apprehension of them is not... God, my phone. Hold on. Where was I? So Isaac Newton says a man may imagine things that are false, but he can only understand things that are true. For if the things be false, the apprehension of them is not understanding. Walt Disney says when you're curious, you find lots of interesting things to do. Orison Swett Martin says all men who have achieved great things have been great dreamers. John Barrow says to treat your facts with imagination is one thing, to imagine your facts is another. Azar Nafisi says you need imagination in order to imagine a future that doesn't exist. So see guys, whatever way that philosophers throughout history have tried to explain the human situation, right, as long as we don't have a discrimination between the inner realm and the outer realm, we can get pulled to being defined by one side. This inner realm phenomena, I would say, some call it qualia, some philosophers, and this term qualia, it's the suggestion of the experiencer and the senses. So as if it's like there's a relationship we have with the sensory, what is here, and then we have a relationship with what is, it's as if it's another layer of seeing, right? That means I can visualize an apple pie right now hovering in the air, right? But I can't eat it, I can't touch it, I can't grab it and put it on the table, right? So that inner event to the experiencer within, they called it qualia, right? And so in all that is being said, when it comes especially to fact and whatnot, what is factual in a changing world? You see, it's all agreement. Language was, you can say, what is the origin of language that we have taken for reality? That means reality is real, great. What about all the language and this linguistic system we have built, right? So it's as if the more materialistic our attention, the more of the immaterial we're going to get noticed. It's like a slingshot, you know, rather than the species walking in balance. Epictetus says, imagine for yourself a character, a model personality whose example you determine to follow in private as well as in public. Julius Caesar says, what we wish, we readily believe, and what we ourselves think, we imagine others think also. Yeah. I mean, every human being has access to one human being's eyes, so everything else is an effort to, it's how far the update is in inner realm landscape, how far it's updated so far. Ellie Weasel says some stories are true that never happened. Baruch Spinoza says it may easily come to pass that a vain man may become proud and imagine himself pleasing to all when he's in reality a universal nuisance. Yeah. Richard Dawkins, I accept that there may be things far grander and more incomprehensible than we can possibly imagine. The question comes that if we say light is entering our eyes and then neural activity is generating our psychology, right? So it means light we never see what is in the outside world. We see light plus what we are. We see the world through us, through ourselves, right? This means that we could have never seen reality. You see? There's a challenge here, incredible philosophical dilemma, I would say. Unless this philosophical dilemma is solved, I would say both sides of the materialist ideologies and immaterialist ideologies are going to just claim. It's just going to become, you know, tug of war of a civilization that deserves better. William Blake says, what is now proved was once only imagined. And of course, guys, when I give these talks, I'm poetically, in my own view, treating myself as a pilot. That means my expectation is just to pilot the person's attention through a landscape, inner landscape. Francois de la Rochefoucauld says, one is never fortunate or as unfortunate as one imagines. Edith Wharton says, true originality consists not in a new manner, but in a new vision. James Russell Lowell says, solitude is as needful to the imagination as society is wholesome for the character. Mark Van Doren says, bring ideas in and entertain them royally, for one of them may be the king. I want to go back to a quote from Baruch Spinoza where he says, it may easily come to pass that a vain man may become proud and imagine himself pleasing to all when he is in reality a universal nuisance. The reality is, because every person's inner realm is different, instantly everything can be a universal nuisance. It depends on what the want is, right? That means we're saying human beings are these brains that emerged, and what did the emergent brain do? It systemized. It became a system. So you can say the nuisance, how in this universe we decide what is a nuisance, what is bad, what is inefficient, is simply based on where the civilization wants to go. That means it's strange. It's as if we are like, you know what it is? It's as if, imagine human species was a beehive, and it's like instead of the bees being said, hey, go get honey and we gotta finish up this hexagonal architecture. Instead of saying that to the bees, it's as if the civilization, the beehive, is saying to the bees, do whatever you want. And the bees are going and doing whatever they want, and the bees are like, wait, something's missing. I feel I was designed for something, you know? So that's the thing, that's the calling of the love of the species. You know, it's as if like it's such an epic level where it's no longer identification with just one's inner realm storification. To walk with the world you're in once, to see what you could never before, be an explorer, and honor will find you before you find it, it seems. So, Jessamine West says, fiction reveals truths that reality obscures. Richard Bach says, to bring anything into your life, imagine that it's already there. This is a very good, I would say, my inner realm algorithm as a response to the outer realms. Okay, last but not least, from Francis Bacon. They are all ill discoverers that think there is no land when they can see nothing but sea. And there's a quote which is not here, but it's from Rabindranath Tagore. He says, "We cannot cross the sea by merely staring at it. We cannot advance civilization just by hoping for it, you know, or accepting what is here now, you know." I feel when we truly get to the interstellar era, we would have experienced ourselves as casually as we're being an individual being. We're going to be casually a collective being. It's going to be as chill as how we're being individual right now. We're going to be collective, but there's going to be so much freedom where it's going to be like we're experiencing multiple bodies rather than one mind. One mind localized to one body. So when it gets to that point, when we truly become interstellar, all human philosophy, like carbon throughout the ages, through pressure becoming diamonds, you know, it's as if the diamond that is to come, that diamond civilization, dare I say, in the game of truth, man gazed beyond the mirror. Gazed beyond the mirror of the moment. We will become interstellar, and people can acknowledge their preference. Me personally, the Mecha era. The Mecha era is like something very, my inner realms are very personal between the geometrical era and the Mecha era. Cyberspace is very strange. Cyberspace is one of those things where if tomorrow they were like, hey, you can connect your head into a virtual world and actually live in whatever way you want, I wouldn't do it, you know. But it is a phase that will come. At least if we keep living like the way we are. I'm going to share this one quote here from James Russell Lowell. He says, "Solitude is as needful to the imagination as society is wholesome for the character." That means society develops your character, solitude develops your imagination. I mean, honestly, like anybody who's depressed and stressed or whatever, right? It is something of the imagination. It's something the mind is happening in a certain way. James Russell Lowell says, "Fate loves the fearless." James Russell Lowell says, "Light is the symbol of truth." Solitude. So we should pretty much be like human beings who are like birds on the tree of knowledge, and then we fly into the sky, look at the whole civilization, a kind of out of humanity instead of out of body and out of civilization experience, you know, and then we come back, we fly back to the glory of whatever it is we're doing here on this earth. The advancement of the communication that we are. That means there's nothing more divine than the opportunity to live conscious of all. And if there was a simple question, how do we prepare for multidimensionality? Multidimensionality means that first you gotta have an experience of one dimension to be able to even fathom there are other dimensions. First there has to be a local experience, then we wonder about the non-local, right? So the best way to prepare for the multidimensional is to study how you're being in a dimension right now and literally treat it as if you're on an island in the middle of nowhere, in a galactic island in the middle of nowhere, okay? And so the person has no choice but in some sense to look at what is around and aim for the efficiency that makes, you know, as if like how the Zen master said, you climb the mountain by starting at the top. The advanced civilization is already there. We're just finding our way to it, you know. Anyways, guys, thanks for listening. I'll be on Discord for those interested. Much blessings and namaste. And guiding words from Civilization 2.0. Rise, mankind, rise. Now is the great universal performance. Namaste.